from that early age, I just kind of had this like obsession with having a life that felt interesting to me and fun to me. Like that was more important than like chasing after corporate success. I want to do this the fun way because you only get to do it once. I guess as I got older, art and music kind of became an escape. And me and my buddy James packed up our stuff and moved out to Los Angeles. That was a big leap. Something just clicked where I was like, I think music is the thing. When you look backwards in that way, it makes it a little easier to see like, oh, like that really bad thing that happened to me, if that didn't happen, then this, and this wouldn't have happened, and then I wouldn't be here. And then suddenly it's like, wow, that was all worth it. All of the times that I have felt the most successful or overjoyed had nothing to do with money. I got spiritually paid more than I got financially paid. And we said, okay, let's move to Colorado. And I said, how are we gonna get there? Everybody went, oh, I don't know, but we're going to. We were like, we should just buy a camper and then we can move all our stuff out there. Campers are expensive. Like, how are we gonna come up with that kind of money? And about 2 days later, I actually have the key to the camper. I keep it in my pocket now as a reminder of like, if you just put it out there to the universe and let it do its thing, it'll work. But if you try to force it, it won't. Manifesting has to come from out there, not from in here.
All right, Dan, thanks so much for taking some time to talk today. I'm really looking forward to diving into, your background, the music groups you've been in, and all of your artistic endeavors. So I really appreciate the chance to talk today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So, we were talking about before, like the Scott family holds a very dear place in my heart. Cause back in, some people might not know this, but I did a lot of musical theater in middle school, and your parents, Sue and Danny, and your sister Abby were like, cornerstones of that, always involved with like the local community theater. And I've been following along with your journey like very, very loosely. So I'm looking forward to like learning more about you, because we've only gotten the chance to talk maybe like very briefly, like once or twice. Yeah. Like, can you remember any, cause I was really young when I was doing musical theater. Can you remember like any interactions that we had? Or
I remember meeting probably after, maybe it was the Barnum show, or one of the other ones that I came back and visited for, but I was coming back didn't live here, I was coming back to visit for a few days, and then I'm at Footlighters meeting like 40 people for the first time. So that's about as much as I remember.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was like 5 years ago, you were there at Footlighters, but I didn't recognize you because you had cut your hair off.
Yeah.
So I was like, that is Dan. I wasn't, because the photos I had seen, you had the long hair. So but yeah, I know we talked for probably 5 minutes there. So this will be great.
Yeah.
But let's start with like your memories of school growing up. Like I think that's a good way to like get into your background. Like, I don't know, like for me, I always thought like I didn't really like fit in high school, or and like in middle school, I was kind of like the theater kid that was kind of like, didn't do a lot of sports. And like, that's just for me. Like whenever people ask me about school, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of like went through the motions. And I think that like school is it's a large part of your foundation, and it really shapes you. So like talk about your background in terms of like what school meant to you and how that shaped your career going forward.
Sure. Let's see. If I could go back very far, like if we're going all the way back to elementary school, I was a really good student who like picked up everything really easily. And then along with that, I think came picking up critical thought, which for better or worse, by the time I was in middle and high school, I was still getting good grades, but I don't want to say a troublemaker because I wasn't going out and getting in trouble, but with the critical thought thing, it was like I really started to question authority and push buttons and try to ask difficult questions. And some teachers loved that. Others hated that. And I'm very grateful for the ones who loved it, because they kind of encouraged me to like keep thinking outside the box. And I guess, yeah, sometime around middle school, probably, skateboarding and music became like the two huge things in my life. Both kind of also go with that whole notion of pushing back against the man. And honestly, skateboarding is where I found my circle. And I would agree, up until I found skateboarding, I definitely kind of felt like, I don't know who I am, I don't know where I fit in. And once I got skateboard buddies, it was like, they still to this day, they are all my best friends. We talk every day. They ended up being in one of my bands in Colorado. And yeah, I've known all those guys since 5th, 6th, 7th grade. I was doing art like the whole time through, like pretty much as early as I could hold a pencil. I was scribbling all over stuff. And my family actually had an au pair who lived with us, Claudine. She moved in when I was a baby and became like a member of the family. And when I was 2 or 3 years old and scribbling and coloring books, she had this thing where she was like, no, like you're going to color in the lines. You're not just going to scribble all over the page, which some people might think is like limiting to a kid. But it worked. And then next thing you know, I'm like coloring perfectly in the lines of all my coloring books as like a small kid. And then art just kind of became something I did for like my whole life. And then I guess as I got older, art and music kind of became an escape, especially from all the school stuff. The more I started to like skateboarding and music and art, the more I started to hate school, to the point that by 10th or 11th grade, I was like really trying to petition my parents to let me drop out and just get a GED and get right to work. Because I was like, guys, I have skills, like I can go put these to use, or I can just like keep doing this, which I'm not enjoying. In hindsight, I'm glad that they didn't let me do that and made me graduate.
This was high school? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then by the time the end of high school came around, it was kind of just the obvious thing to like, I had taken every single art class that my high school had to offer, some of them twice. So going to art school was kind of like the obvious next step, but I wasn't really all that excited about it. So I applied to like 12 or 13 schools. I got into all of them, and then ended up going to Tyler School of Art at Temple in Philly, which was honestly last on my list of all of the schools, but it was because it's a state school, it was the best financial option. And at the time I started apprenticing and then working as a tattoo artist while I was still in high school. So I was already working pretty much full time right out of high school anyway. So then I really didn't want to go to college because I was like, I'm already making good money doing this. And I went to college and I lasted about a month and a half before I dropped out and said, this isn't for me, I need to do something else. And me and my buddy James packed up our stuff and moved out to Los Angeles. And then that's where the whole kind of rest of my life with art and music started to unfold. But yeah, that was a big leap, but it made a tremendous difference because I think that from that early age, I just kind of had this like obsession with having a life that felt interesting to me and fun to me. Like that was more important than like chasing after corporate success or like a gigantic salary or whatever it was. It was like, kind of like a Hunter S. Thompson approach. Like I want to do this the fun way because you only get to do it once. So, yeah. And that has worked out for me most of the time. It's gotten me into some tight situations other times, but I wouldn't trade it. So,
yeah, I can relate to not finishing college. I mean, I did 2 years and then I left, and I also went to Temple. It was only for a year, but and I was studying film. I was in the communications department, so I guess not technically the art and design school, but still it was like a creative pursuit. And I don't know, this is a common theme on this podcast that I often bring up is, for full-time creative people, just like the overall stigma, against like pursuing that over taking like the corporate route, like you said. And I'm sure that the decision to leave college early and move to LA was like, probably wasn't very popular among, I don't know, like what did the rest of your family think of that, or like what were the reactions to it? And do you think it took a level of courage to do that? And like what grounded you in that decision, do you think?
Well, it was a couple things. You're right. It was definitely an unpopular decision with the family. And most of my friends, no, not most of them, some of them were kind of like, are you sure about this, man? The family was definitely not happy about it, but also just that like month and a half that I was going to Temple, I went from like a happy guy to like extremely depressed and like having panic attacks, and was just like, crashing into the mountain basically. And thankfully they also noticed that. So they were like, okay, maybe this isn't right for him. They didn't think that packing up and running off to LA was a great move, but they at least knew that like I needed to do something else. And I think eventually they kind of said, you've been like a wild soul searching artist your whole life. Like we kind of have to like let you go figure this out. But I had kind of had this, I was like obsessed with the idea of California, even from when I was a little kid before I had ever been there. And then I spent some time there in high school and fell in love with LA. And that was where I wanted to go to college. I really wanted to go to Los Angeles Film School. And it was so much, it was like 5 times the price of me going to Temple. So it like, didn't make sense at the time. I actually ended up going to LA Film School when I moved out there for a year. And then same thing happened. I was there for a month and a half and I was like, I think I want to do music instead.
What was it about the college environment that made you not very motivated? Was it having to, like what you said before, of having to, I think coloring in between the lines is like a great metaphor. Like, is that, like, did you feel restricted, or there was just something more that you wanted, or like what was it that was undesirable for you about the college environments?
Yeah, it did feel a little restricting. A lot of the art schools do a thing that they call foundation year, where for your whole freshman year, regardless of what your focus medium is, they kind of make you have to take a drawing class and you have to take a sculpture class and a little bit of everything, which I get. But like I said, I had done every single one of those art classes in high school already. A lot of them were AP college classes. So by the time I got there, I was like bored to tears. I was like, this is all stuff that I did 2-3 years ago, and I already know what I want to do. Can I like skip past this? And at Temple in particular, with Tyler, when I was a junior in high school, junior or senior, I went to visit it, and they used to be at their own campus up in Ambler, and it was this like beautiful old estate with all these like mansion buildings. And I loved it when I went to see it. I was like, this is an art school. Like, I could go here. And then by the time I got in, Tyler was like, oh, we're moving away from the Ambler campus onto the main campus. We just built this new state-of-the-art building, and you guys are going to be the first ones to use it. And I got there, and it looked like a corporate center. And I was like, this is not creative for me at all. Like, this is just like white walls and bright lights. And the other place was like this beautiful old estate out in nature. Yeah. And that kind of crushed it for me. I was like, I can't get creative in here. And then when I was at LA Film School, I actually really liked the environment there. But just, I got a month and a half in, and something just clicked where I was like, I think music is the thing, not this. And I still love film, and have my hands in that in various ways a little bit here and there. If I hadn't had that epiphany about wanting to do music more full time, I would probably have finished. And then years later, when I moved back out to LA, I ended up going back to school again, to UCLA for music production. And I didn't get a full degree. This was actually a blessing. Thank you to the lady at UCLA, because I called to sign up for the undergrad program and told her I want to do music production. And she was like, hey, listen, like, if you don't need the degree to do music, and if you do the music production 4-year program, like 80% of it is going to be gen ed classes that have nothing to do with music. So if you're really looking for the education and not the piece of paper, you should just sign up for the individual classes, and then you'll be done in a year. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that.
That's pretty rare advice, it seems,
I know.
from someone in higher education.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was great. And that time I loved it, because then I was really ready, and I was invested, and I was interested. And the UCLA campus is great. So that was nice. Made it a little more fun. And my teachers were cool. Like, that's the nice thing about LA is, like, everybody is somebody to some degree. Everybody's in the business. So, like, all my teachers were, like, actually, like, working mixing engineers and recording studio guys. So I was like, all right, I'm actually learning from somebody who does this full time and isn't teaching full time, which, no offense at all to teachers, but, you know, with music, and that's, like, such a crazy business that there was a little bit more, I don't know, I felt a little more trust learning it from somebody who is actually, like, still invested in and working in the field.
What's the mesmerizing thing, or like the attractive thing about, like, California and LA too, that, like, makes it stand out? Because it seems, you know, that's the place to be for, you know, if it's music production, film. Do you think it's who you're surrounded by, or is it more than that?
It's partially that. It's partially just the geographical location. The fact that, like, you know, LA's got beaches and mountains and desert, and, you know, you can go surfing, snowboarding, and skateboarding in the same day. And you're surrounded by all sorts of people, and it is extremely frequent in Los Angeles that you just, like, happen to randomly bump into somebody that you needed to meet and has a connection that ends up making something happen for you. Mm-hmm. And lots of just, serendipitous little magical opportunities that would pop up that would never happen anywhere else. And there's so many talented people out there. I think LA kind of gets, like, a little bit of a bad rap for having a lot of fake people. Which, to some degree, that's true. There's a lot of people, like, chasing the dream of, like, being an actor, and but in my experience, there's also, like, some of the most amazing people I've ever met live out there, and some of the most talented people and fun people. And I was really I think I was mostly attracted to the weather, and just the whole vibe. Like, it just it felt home, you know. It's like, this is. Especially, like, being a skateboarder since I was a kid, I was like, yeah, this is right up my alley.
Mm-hmm. And then talk about how you ended up in Colorado.
So I was in LA for a year after high school, came back east for a little while, and then, like, not even a year, maybe 6 months. And then a few of my skateboarding buddies and I started making music together, started a band, and then decided, hey, let's get out of Pennsylvania. Let's try something different. And obviously I'm partial to California, so I said, let's do that. And everybody else said, well, okay, like, yeah, that's cool, but, like, what if we try something that's not that? So we started doing some research, like, where are other cool places to live? And Colorado kept popping up, and the more we talked about it, the more the universe just kind of handed us little signals that, like, that was the spot to go to. And that one unfolded very quickly. Like, we went from saying, all right, like, I think it was, like, April of 2011, we were like, let's move to Colorado in August. And by August 22nd, we were in a camper on our way west. And we took a month-long road trip to get out there. And posted up in Fort Collins and got a house together, set up our studio there, and got a whole live band together, started playing shows, and yeah, we loved it out there. I still love it out there. It's the only problem with Colorado is there's no beach. But it's great. It's the nature out there is amazing.
I guess the mountains probably make up for it a little bit.
Yeah. Going up to the mountains in Colorado, it's kind of the same energetic vibe as the beach in California. It's just like a breath of fresh air where you can get away from everything and just like stare out into the abyss of nature and remember how small you are and how small all your problems are. And yeah, for a while in Colorado, we ended up living in this amazing house, like 30 minutes up into the mountains that was like seated right on a lake. And it was like, you never wanted to leave. And we had our recording studio up there and a couple dogs and 6 of us living in the house. It was just like a great time.
Yeah, I was in Boulder in September. And it's definitely magical to like have all the mountains around you. And I just think, like, as a side note, I think it's so important for you to move out of your hometown, like, at some point. And I mean, I haven't left Pennsylvania as my home. You know, I'm 25 and I've always called Pennsylvania home, but even moving, you know, I moved from the Philadelphia area to Lancaster, which is like an hour and a half. But even then, like, I grew up in the suburbs and like in a pretty nice zip code. And then I moved into the city part of Lancaster. And Lancaster City it's night and day different from where I grew up. And just you know, my neighbors are just so different from like the neighbors I grew up with. And I think in a good way, like it's good to experience different, like, you know, people who might not be like from the main line that have a ton of money. Like, it's just, it was very eye-opening to me. And I really encourage that, even if it's on a smaller level, like you're moving just out of your hometown an hour away, like, or if you move across the country, and you're obviously going to, like, traveling is going to make you realize that, like, the world that you know, if you've only lived in one place your whole life, it's like there's so much more out there to like to learn from and experience. So it sounds like you've definitely had the chance to do that a lot. Right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because when I was in early high school, I had like no desire to leave Philly. I pretty much saw myself like setting up shop in Philly full time for my life. And then when I was 17, we went out to California for a cousin's wedding, and we didn't do the whole coast, but we did kind of like the whole Southern California half. And I was immediately like, oh my gosh, there's more to life than Philly. And yeah, you're right. Being out there really gives you some perspective. And again, with the LA's reputation, everybody thinks it's like, oh, all these rich people in Beverly Hills. Like, there's also a lot of really low income neighborhoods and a lot of really bad spots, like some even worse than parts of Philly. And you kind of get to see all of it out there, which really broadens your perspective, because you kind of see it stretch in both directions. And yeah, I definitely would not have that little bit of wisdom had I not left.
And it sounds like your environment has a big influence on you as an artist, like what you're able to create, you know, if you're surrounded by mountains and, or if you're in a city, or if you're in like a corporate building, is, you know, you can get uninspired or just feel like you just don't have that spark or something. Like, can you talk about that, like the different, I mean, like even now, like how you set up your recording studio, or where it is, or who's around you, or like, how do you get the like creative momentum? Like, does your environment play a role into that? Is it like your connections? Is it like the music that you listen to of people that you're inspired by? Like, where do you find that creative momentum to create, I guess?
Ooh, good one. All of the above. My surroundings are definitely important. Getting a good vibe in the room is I'm big on that. So yeah, my studio is like filled with all sorts of fun, visually stimulating stuff. I got a bunch of lava lamps and a gigantic Oriental rug and all sorts of just crystals and fun trinkets and just stuff all over the place to look at and just kind of make it feel more moody and comfortable. But even then, every so often it's like, all right, I got to step outside and get some fresh air and look at something different for a little bit. Yeah, being out in like the mountains of Colorado or California definitely sparks inspiration, but so can being back here. It's kind of just a different flavor, I think. Who I'm around definitely plays a part, whether it comes to visual art or music stuff. You know, I have a handful of great friends and collaborators that definitely kind of, if I've got a little spark of an idea, they'll come and pour gas on it. And then next thing you know, we've got a finished product. And yeah, also when it, like you said, with different music that I listen to, or really anything, it's like books, film, stand-up comedy. I'm kind of always just looking for inspiration in anything. And I've always kind of tended to look for inspiration in unusual places. Like when it comes to songwriting, I often will come up with a song lyric based on something that was not inspired by another song or anything else. It was like, oh, it might have been inspired by just like a joke that somebody made to me. I'm like, oh, that's kind of clever. What if I put my spin on that? Or yeah, something I read out of a book or something I overheard in a conversation on the street. I'm kind of just like always being a sponge. And kind of unfortunately, but also fortunately, I guess, I have very little control over when the metaphorical sponge gets wrung out. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I got to sit down and work on something and make something, and nothing happens. And then next thing you know, it's like 2 a.m. and I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like jumping out of bed because I have the song idea and I need to run and grab my guitar and get it before it disappears.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of at the whim of whenever the creative force strikes, but at least it comes through.
Yeah. So that kind of segues perfectly into, asking about the genre of psychedelic rock. So did psychedelic rock choose you, or did you choose it? Like from what made you pursue that genre in particular, or did you try a couple different things and then settle on that, or like what led you to like the type of music that you're working on now?
Well, yeah, when I was younger, back in my, teenage skateboarding days, it was like all about punk rock and heavy music. But once I got into high school, my taste kind of broadened a little bit, and a good friend of mine got me into the Doors in like 8th grade, which like I would have to say to this day is probably still my favorite band if I had to pick. That's hard to pick, but But I was like even though I was like hanging out with the skate kids and stuff back then, I was like not getting into trouble and drinking or doing drugs or anything. And it wasn't till I was older and had actually taken psychedelics and then listened to some of this music like the Doors, and then it clicked. And then my whole music taste changed, and I started listening to more, Pink Floyd and the Flaming Lips and MGMT, and then it just exploded from there to where it was like I really don't have one genre taste in music. It's like I listen to everything at this point. And like going back to the sponge thing, it's like I'll listen to Wu-Tang Clan and then listen to Beethoven, like,
right.
And I'll find something inspirational out of both of them. So I think sometime around, like the age of 19, 20, 21, I started to really have an appreciation for psychedelic rock, specifically because it wasn't about like being fast and loud necessarily. It was about like creating this sonic landscape that really didn't have any rules in the way that other genres did. And even the moniker of psychedelic rock is in itself pretty broad. Like, you've got all these little individual pockets of psych rock. Some are more fuzzy garage rock. Some are more like Flaming Lips, more like cinematic and orchestral. And that, I think, is what really grabbed me, was like, there's no rules on that canvas. Like, I can kind of do whatever it is that I am feeling. This song could have an acoustic guitar, that song could have a synthesizer, and find a way to make it cohesive. And then once I started pursuing that genre a little bit, I found it to be the most fun, I think, for that reason, because I was not coloring in the lines, so to speak. Or if I was, I guess I was creating the lines or pushing the lines a little bit to give myself the palette that I wanted.
Yeah, I guess you have to establish like what the lines are or the rules first before you color outside them or break the rules. Like, that's kind of how I like to think about learning sometimes. It's like you have to know the rules before you break the rules. So it's worth it's worth learning them and experiencing it before you venture beyond it. So
yeah, and I guess too that because there's so few limits on what that genre entails, it also made it so there was a lot to learn. And when we did our band Miscommunicado out in Colorado, I was kind of the de facto front man, and our other guitarist James, he was very interested in the whole production side of things. So I focused a little more on songwriting. He focused a little more on production and mix engineering. And then as the years went on, it kind of just occurred to me gradually that, like, all right, if I'm going to be this invested in this, I should also know how to do all that stuff. Which then that became like a big hurdle to get over. Once I started like really learning about production and mixing and everything, I was like, oh my God, this is so much stuff to absorb and so many things to think about at one time. Which is ultimately why I went to UCLA. It was like, I want to learn from somebody who really knows what they're doing and learn how to do this right, so that then I can break the rules.
Can you talk about the role of collaboration and how that's played into like the groups that you've been a part of? Because I'm sure it's like what you're saying, you feel inclined to learn how to do every part of the process, but also like harnessing everyone's individual strengths can like be even more powerful sometimes. Like, can you talk about that dynamic and the desire that you have to want to do every part of the process, but also recognizing like, okay, maybe if I like step back a little bit and let the other members of the band kind of give them the creative leeway here, and then like that might make a better product? Like, can you talk about like the tension between those two things?
Yeah, I think for me at least, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Part of me was a little obsessive about wanting to be able to do it all myself.
Just having the option to.
Right, and not necessarily needing to, but like, if I need to, I can.
Right.
With Miscommunicado, the collaboration was everybody kind of brought their own thing to the table a little bit. Our backing guy, Luke, was a little more rooted in like electronic and like kind of 80s dancey kind of stuff. James was a little bit more interested in like the production side of things and like lots of rock music. And then I was interested more in like songwriting and that kind of thing. And so everybody kind of just like met in the middle. But to your point about like knowing the rules so you can break them, gradually over learning production and stuff, I was also learning more and more instruments. Drums is actually my first instrument, and then guitar came later, which is now my main instrument. But I started learning piano, and then bass is kind of like guitar and drums put together. And
that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, you know, it's like it's like playing drums but with notes. And so while learning production and mixing was also getting better at guitar and drums and bass and keys and learning about synthesis. And now with my current band, Kewl Haze, my songwriting production partner, Derek, he used to have a band in Philly called Weekender. And he does production and mixing, and also used to be a drummer, now guitarist, and plays drums and keys. So when we collaborate, it's a little different because it's like, okay, we learned the rules, now let's break them. And the process is just different because instead of kind of everybody meeting in the middle, it's like he and I are bouncing around the studio because we both play multiple things. So it's like, I'll play drums, you play guitar. That's a cool idea. Now you jump on the bass, I'll jump on the keys. Let's see what we can put on top of that. And then sometimes it's like, oh, that's not the thing. Now I'll play guitar and you play keys, and then let's see what that happens. And that, at least for us, that tends to work. We tend to get to the finish line pretty quickly, but it's just different.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, you saying that I saw like a documentary or a video on how A Day in the Life by the Beatles was written, where it's like basically 2 songs combined, and then they brought in the orchestra and they couldn't figure out how to do that crescendo part because like the orchestra didn't like how having notes written, it didn't make sense to them. So like how to articulate to get that sound that's ended up there, and then combining the two. I think that's just fascinating because you have like the 2 songwriters combining into one song, and sometimes you just have one songwriter, and like it's a lot of the times it's really a collective effort, but you can also do it individually. So I'm not sure if there's like a set formula for music. There's really not. It's just and I think it's people having like the courage to like bend the rules. Like that's what's moved things forward throughout. And I mean, like what you're saying with the Doors, like this is kind of like on a tangent here, but like the intro to Light My Fire with the harpsichord is like, if you really listen to that, it's like, wow. Cause that's, that's like probably he was in, I don't know did Jim Morrison write that?
The keyboard part?
Yeah, or just
that was Ray Manzarek.
Okay, yeah, but I'm sure that they were inspired by like classical music, and that had an influence in that intro. And it's like everything is built off each other throughout like music history, which I think is really fascinating. And
there's actually a part of the big keyboard solo in that song where I know Ray Manzarek was really into jazz, and I saw an interview where I forget exactly which part of the solo it is, but he points it out, and he's like, that little lick that I'm doing there is like directly stolen from John Coltrane. Like just took his thing and just put it in our song. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, just finding inspiration anywhere, and music definitely, everybody's been piggybacking off everybody else for as long as it's been around. We only have 12 notes to work with. I think obviously like technology and synthesis and everything like that of the last 30 years or so has made it possible to do things that they couldn't do back then. But as far as music theory goes, we're all still working with the same building blocks. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have to find ways to be creative,
Yeah, and each band, having their own recognizable sound, I think that's interesting, whether it's like the vocalist has a very distinct voice, or even just like, you can't really put a finger on what it is, but it's like, oh, that, I don't know what song this is called, but I know it's from this group because they have that signature sound. Yep. Like, is that something that you are like, actively, are you conscious of trying to replicate that with Kewl Haze, or is it, or are you just like doing what speaks to you and then that will like figure itself out?
Mostly the latter. With Kewl Haze, Kewl Haze technically started bi-coastally. I was still in LA at the time, and like I said, Derek had his band Weekender in Philly, and he and I had kind of just been keeping tabs on each other's music projects and whatnot. And I came back to visit Philly and just went to get a beer with him and went to his house, and we were like, oh, let's like get the guitars out and mess around. And next thing you know, we wrote a whole demo together, which eventually became what is the first song on our upcoming LP. but then I, flew back to LA, and it was like, oh, cool, we have this kind of collaboration thing we worked on. And then during the pandemic, we started sending each other demos and kind of messing around with each other's ideas. At which point we were like, hey, I think we kind of have something here. And then when I came back east, we were like, all right, now we're in the same spot. Let's do this and see where it goes. And we didn't really have any intention at the time. It was kind of just like, hey, let's write some songs and we'll put an EP together and see what happens. But when we went into it, we kind of said, let's not have rules. Let's make the only rule, let's try it. If you have an idea, we'll try it. And if it sounds cool, it's going to end up on the album. And also kind of had to be very open and vulnerable. We trust each other enough. And Miscommunicado was like this too. We trust each other enough to where it's like, if I have an idea and somebody else is like, that's not the thing, then it's like, okay, I'm not precious about it. That's not the thing. Forget it. We'll move on.
Yeah. Talk about that. In terms of not wanting to offend each other and setting your ego aside, in pursuit of the overall success of creating the best song. Is that tough? I'm sure it is sometimes.
It can be, because definitely not everybody's like that. I've been very blessed that most, if not all, of my songwriting partners, we've never had that issue. It's pretty much always just been like, hey, if I think your idea sucks, I'm going to tell you, and don't be upset, because I'm not telling you to make you feel bad. I'm telling you so that we can just move on, and then we will find the thing that's great.
Right.
And for the most part, with all of my collaborators, we're batting 1,000 in that department. It's as long as there's no ego or no feelings getting hurt about an idea not being the best one, very quickly afterwards, you find the one that is the thing. But yeah, not everybody's like that, but I don't know if I'm just lucky that I keep ending up in situations where the collaborations are easy, but I guess it's kind of a good metaphor for life in general. You kind of just have to check your ego at the door if you want to get anything done, or if you want to get it done well.
Yeah. And I think the key thing you said there is trusting each other.
Yeah.
Just knowing that we all have our best intentions in mind here, and it's not personal. It's it's a part of collaboration. And I do agree that there are parallels that can be drawn to just not getting offended by things like that. Just even if someone does criticize you and says, I don't like your song, or I don't like your music for whatever reason, to be okay, I'm not going to please everybody. And that's just an essential part of being an artist, is coming to grips with that.
It is. Yeah. And, just last thing back to your original question about, were we going for a cohesive sound? The short answer is no. We both kind of had, so Derek and I have some similar music tastes and then some opposite. And we kind of just said let's aim for the area where our tastes overlap. And the first few songs we wrote are definitely in that part of the Venn diagram. And then we just kind of one night said, let's try something that's out of our wheelhouse. And we wrote another song, which is also ended up on our upcoming album. And from that point, we said, hey, let's not make an EP. Let's write some more songs and keep breaking the rules and see how far we can stretch this thing. And if nothing comes of it, oh well. And if something does, cool. And next thing you know, we had 11 songs, and we went, whoa, these are all very, very different from each other, but when you put them together in an album, they sound like each other. And I think if we had really intentionally tried to do that, we probably would have missed. But we just, like you said, just kind of got in the room and let it happen naturally, and let whatever needed to come out. And with trusting each other and kind of guiding the ship for each other when somebody's got an idea. That's another nice thing when you have multiple collaborators who they know production and they know different instruments. It happens all the time where it's I have an idea and I can't even look at the computer because I'm so invested in this guitar idea that I have, and Like whether it's with James and Luke and Miscommunicado or Derek and Kewl Haze, it's like they pick up on that and they're like, keep going. Like, get the idea out while you have it. I'll steer the ship. I'll run the computer, and vice versa. And we just kind of, working together with people long enough, you kind of start to pick up on like I can see it in their eyes. I'm like, uh-oh, there's the spark. Like, he's got something. I better jump in here and help pull this out.
Mm-hmm. Have you experienced times where you've invested like so much into writing a song and it just like, it doesn't fit on the album, or you just to talk about, having to grapple with that, where you're like, I've invested so much time and energy and belief into this, but I just don't think it fits. I'm sure that's a really difficult, like, creative decision. So like it sounds like you have experienced that. So talk about like an example of that, or how to, like, as an artist, how to get over that, where like it's not, because for me, whenever I work on something and it like never sees the light of day, like for whatever reason, if it's for a client and it gets canned at the last second, or if it's like a short film that like never got finished, I always think it's like that it never was wasted time working on it, because there are personal lessons that you can take from it, even if it's like not necessarily released or seen by the public. So that's a way that I like to frame that sometimes, but I'm curious like how you think about that.
I completely agree. I would say that any creative time is not necessarily wasted. Also, I would say, like, for every album me or any of my bands have put out, I've got 2 more albums worth of unfinished songs that didn't make it, at least. Not to mention little short demos that are a promising idea but never get really revisited. But sometimes they do. For example, like I said, when I came back from California to visit, and Derek and I wrote what would become the first song on the Kewl Haze record. What we wrote that day by itself is not the finished song. It was actually, once I got back to LA and we were sending each other demos back and forth to collaborate on, he sent me a song of a demo of his that I loved. And for a couple of years, we were working on them for the album as 2 separate songs. And as we got closer to finishing, those 2 felt like they both needed a lot of work, and we were starting to be like, maybe we're just gonna like ditch those and either never finish them or save them for the next one. And then one day it occurred to me, like, wait a minute, they're almost in the same tempo and they are in the same key. What if we make one song out of these 2 ideas? And I hopped on the computer and kind of did some remix stuff and then went, oh, that works. And I showed it to Derek, and then we finished it like immediately and said, oh, okay, yeah, that's going on the album. So sometimes those obviously weren't wasted ideas, because years later they turned into something.
Yeah, you can't necessarily plan for it.
Right, yeah. But on the other hand, when I left Colorado to move back out to LA in 2018, I had like just gone through a heavy breakup, and that was also when I was getting into learning all the production stuff for myself. So I wanted to make a solo record, and I did. I made like a whole solo LP and ended up canning it at the last minute, because once it was done, I had gotten over that hump and started to like, get back to myself and feel better. And then it was like, well, now all of these songs don't really feel authentic to me. They feel like me when I was like going through the ringer, and I'm not anymore. So I'm not going to put this out. And then I pretty much ditched all of those and then wrote a whole new one. And then even then I was planning on making an LP, and I ended up ditching like half the songs and just did an EP. And those ones are all still sitting in my hard drive too. And once in a while I'll pop them open and be like, oh, there's still some good stuff in here. I should probably go fishing for a little bit and see what I can put to use.
Yeah, but I guess it's all cumulative, like, because it could always come back and you could repurpose it or reignite that inspiration another time. So Yeah, that's how I often like to think about that stuff.
Thankfully, we have computers now and can record, or even an iPhone, if you have an idea, just record it while you have it and then come back later.
Absolutely. Tell me about like the similarities and differences between like all the different art mediums that, you know, you've indulged with. You know, you mentioned doing like you did the tattoo apprenticeship, and then, you know, you eventually worked in that, and then, you know, music, and then obviously we have to talk about the mural that you just finished in Berwyn. So like painting, tattoos, music, in, you know, film at one point in your journey. Is there a common denominator that ties all those things together for you? Because I'm sure like they're very different, but is there like how are all of those things like connected? I know it's an abstract question, but
Totally. That's a good one. I think it goes back to one of your earlier questions about why I went down the psychedelic rock path. Film was kind of the same way. It was like film is like this combination of photography and music and editing and lighting and acting and storytelling, and sometimes comedy, sometimes drama, or sometimes both. Which, same thing for me. It was like, oh, this is like all of the things at once instead of just one of them. But I guess when we get into like more visual art of, when, you know, tattooing, muraling, canvas painting, whatever. Also the same thing. I think like the music and the films and the art that I love the most are the ones that really make you think and are really multi-layered. And like the more you take them in, the more you find something new. And like those are like my favorite types of movies and albums, is like I could watch it or listen to it 100 times and I just keep noticing more and more little details that I didn't catch up on before, all of which are important to the big picture and make it all make more sense. Mm-hmm. And that is when I find myself like really appreciating a piece of music or a piece of cinema or whatever it is. And yeah, I think my painting style is kind of the same thing. There's lots of detail, lots of bright color. It's kind of like, it's like almost overwhelming until you let it sink in, and then it's like, whoa. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and especially with music stuff, I'm always I try to like bring comedy as an inspiration into lyrics without it. You know, I don't make comedy music, but comedy is a big inspiration. Like, mm-hmm. like George Carlin's thought process is a gigantic inspiration on my lyric writing. 'Cause it is kind of this just like edgy, satirical observation of the world we live in, in a way that like might push a little bit of boundaries, but also like might make you change your mind about something. Yeah. And I think those are probably the artists that have spoken to me the most, or the ones that really make me open my mind and say like, well, wow, I didn't think about X, Y, or Z in that way until they said it like that. And now I can't unlearn that.
Right. So I guess from what I'm interpreting is that every art medium, like you can extract that thought-provoking aspect from it. Like whether it's visual, audio, cinema, just you peeling back the layers. And I guess like if you're driving past your mural like all the time, you could probably notice something different about it each time, you know.
Oh, so yeah.
It's,
even if you're not driving past, if you're standing there staring at it,
right,
there's Easter eggs all over that thing. Mm-hmm. And that's how, you know, that's kind of how the music thing is too. When it comes to production and mixing and stuff, it's like lots of ear candy, lots of little details, lots of stuff that you might miss if you're only looking or listening at the big picture. But once you actually like pay attention to the details, there's a lot going on, and all of it is important to the whole. Mm-hmm.
You said earlier that pursuing, I don't know if you want to like speak generally, but the decision to like take that first step and move to LA, like for better or worse, it opened a lot of doors, but also got you into some like tight situations at times. Can you talk about like where you derive hope from in those tight situations, like to keep going? Is it like, are you spiritual? Is it like family? Is it music? Is it like other forms of creativity? Like where have you found hope to keep going in those lower points?
Good one. Music, definitely. Yeah, going back to my early 20s, I guess. Psychedelics completely changed the way that I look at the world for better, and kind of just gave me this lasting impression of, like I mentioned earlier with going out into nature, like does the same thing. It's like you realize how small you are, and you know what a blip in the universe you are, yet at the same time what a statistical unlikelihood it is that you're even born.
Right. I think about that a lot.
Yeah. And those two things paired together kind of can make you appreciate stuff. And I've also had plenty of experience in learning firsthand that letting the crap get the best of you tends to make things worse.
Yeah.
And I've also had plenty of experience the other way, where when you can get out of your own way, everything starts to unfold. Like, I'll give you an example. When we decided, like me and the guys in Miscommunicado, when we decided to move to Colorado, I remember this like it was yesterday. We were sitting on my parents' couch and we said, okay, let's move to Colorado. We're going to go in August of this year. And I said, how are we going to get there? And everybody went, oh, I don't know, but we're going to. The universe will figure it out. So within a week, we were like, we should just buy a camper and then we can move all our stuff out there. And we're like, okay, well, campers are expensive. Like, how are we going to come up with that kind of money? We said, I don't know, but we will. The universe will figure it out. And about 2 days later, my buddy Luke, who was in Miscommunicado with us, he's a car guy, and his dad calls him and says, hey, a buddy of mine, his son has this Pontiac that he's been driving, but his son has a heroin addiction and locked his drugs and his keys in his car and then tried to break into his own car to get it out. And that was the moment that everybody in the family said, okay, we're taking the car away, you're going to rehab. And his dad's friend says, here, we have this car, we're going to get rid of it. We don't even want to sell it. If you can fix it up, I'll give it to you, and then you can either use it or you can sell it.
Wow.
So we got, the next day, it was like, at the time, it was only like a 8-year-old Pontiac, and it took Luke like 2 days to fix it, and then we sold it for more money than we needed to buy the camper. And strangely enough, I actually have the key to the camper. I keep it in my pocket now as a reminder of like, if you just believe, if you just put it out there to the universe and let it do its thing, it'll work. But if you try to force it, it won't. Like, manifesting has to come from out there, not from in here.
Wow, that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
And I love the key as like a physical representation of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of like, you know, like tattoos, like having meaning, and I'm sure that can be very similar where like I don't have any tattoos myself, but like if you have one, it like you're constantly reminded of something. Like, what sort of meaning do you derive from, like, if it's like the tattoos you have or tattoos that you've like given other people, or like what I'm sure you can sort of, you can like replicate the same thing with those, right? Like through art. Absolutely. Yeah. And the interesting thing with tattooing is that it's very personal to every individual. For myself as a artist and collector, a lot of my tattoos have some deep meaning, especially a lot of the ones I got first. Now that I have so many, I have plenty of
ones that are just fun and silly, and like I have a slice of pizza tattooed on my leg, and people are always like, "What's that mean?" And I'm like, I love pizza. It's funny." But yeah, it's a lot of people come to get tattoos for like really, really deep meanings, and then others just like the art, and others are just collectors. But yeah, it can be pretty deep. Like there was a time when I was living in LA and I worked at a tattoo shop, and this dad comes in with his son, and they wanted to get tattoos, and I'm like, okay, great. And I get everything drawn up for them, and they loved it. And I said, okay, here, we just got to have you fill out the paperwork and we'll get started. At which point we found out that the son was not 18 yet. He was like 17 and a half. And in California, the laws are different to where if you get in trouble for tattooing a minor, scarification of a minor falls under the same classification as sex offenders. And I was like, sorry guys, I'm not doing that. And they were like, oh, okay, we understand. And they left. And then I saw them. They were standing in the back parking lot, and the dad was crying. And I was like, well, that's weird. Why was he making such a big deal of it? And I went out and was like, hey, are you guys okay? What's going on? And the dad pulled me aside and was like, listen, man, here's the deal. Like 2 months ago, I got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and they gave me like 6 months to live. And so my son and I have been spending that 6 months doing everything we've ever wanted to do together. And one of those things was to get a tattoo. And I'm a little upset because I don't think I'm going to make it until he's 18.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, don't do this to me.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, guys, get back in here. Like, don't sign that paper because this didn't happen. But you guys are getting tattoos. And they were so thankful. Like they couldn't have been happier. They were just, and it made all the difference for me too. Cause like they were so appreciative, and I was tattooing them all day, and they're just like beaming that they got to do this thing together. And I was like, this is what it's all about, man. Like, this is so much cooler than like, yeah, I got paid today, but like I got spiritually paid more than I got financially paid, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Usually I wrap up these podcasts by, asking people their definition of success. And, I'm curious, like, as you've, gone throughout your career, like looking back, like what are the things that you're most proud of, and thinking ahead, like what are the, like, pillars of success that you want to try to like keep pouring into to, it's like you just said in that story, you want to be spiritually filled and financially filled, like, because both are like just as important. So, that might be an example of it, but can you like dive into your definition of success a little bit?
Yes. First and foremost, I'd say the simple one-word answer is happiness. I have met and interacted with plenty of people over the years who are successful by society's standards when it comes to money and belongings, who are miserable human beings. And I have also met plenty of people who have next to nothing, who are some of the happiest people ever. And so, I mean, success is kind of like what you make it. I think a big part of it is being honest with yourself about what you want and what it looks like to you. I guess, yeah, money has a little bit to do with it. For me, though, not so much in a, like, the number in my bank account doesn't matter, but sure, like, if I have enough money to live comfortably, then that takes a lot of stress away and lets more room for happiness. It's a little harder to focus on everything being great when you're stressed about bills and everything. But that said, like, you could have theoretically all the money in the world, and if what's going on inside your head is a mess, you're not going to be happy and you're not going to be fulfilled. And to your point earlier, I think you kind of have to get out there a little bit. You have to travel, you have to see new places, meet new people, try new things, and take in what the world and the universe have to offer, to then figure out what works for you and what it is that you're going for. what makes you comfortable, what makes you happy, what makes you fulfilled, and then finding a way to take that thing and then give it to the world. I can say that throughout my career, whether it's music or art, all of the times that I have felt the most successful or overjoyed had nothing to do with money. Every single time it was something intangible, like a moment that I never could have imagined or planned, that just kind of makes you say, like, this is what it's about. This was worth it. And I love those moments too, because they really bring you back to the present in a way where time kind of evaporates for a second, and in that short moment you can kind of instantly think back to all of the little stepping stones along the way that had to happen to get to this exact moment, which for me brings a lot of clarity because when you start looking at it that way, you kind of, again, back to your earlier question about how to get through the difficult times. When you look backwards in that way, it makes it a little easier to see, like, oh, like that really bad thing that happened to me, if that didn't happen, then this, and this wouldn't have happened, and then I wouldn't be here. And then suddenly it's like, wow, that was all worth it. Like, I'll give you another good example. My dog recently passed back in August. I had her for 14 years. And me and the other guys in Miscommunicado, we got her together when we first moved to Colorado. And she became a member of the band, basically, and was just, like the best friend I've ever had. And I think back to before we moved to Colorado, part of one of the reasons we wanted to get out of Pennsylvania was I got arrested for weed. And I was like, this is stupid. I don't want to deal with this again. Maybe we should live somewhere where this won't be a problem. A year later, we're in Colorado, and then 2 weeks after moving there, we have our dog. And back in August when she passed, I thought backwards again and went, wow, getting arrested that night sucked. But I never would have had her if that hadn't happened. And it's like, I would do that 1,000 times over again for that result. So, yeah, keeping a really broad perspective on everything, I think, makes you open to receive success. If you're too focused on every little detail or too worried about every little thing, or getting caught up in the drama in your head, or specifically in like past narratives or recurring stories that you tell yourself about yourself, you'll never get to success, because you'll just constantly be trying to, clean out the mess in your mental closet. So yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of bouncing around here, but again, short answer is happiness, and the longer answer would be you have to know what that looks like for you.
I think everything happens for a reason. Like you're saying, one thing leads to the next, and then when you look back and have that perspective, it's powerful, and that can bring its own sense of purpose and happiness when you look back and be like, okay, none of that was in vain, or that was like an important, it wasn't necessarily fun in the moment, but it led to the next thing. And I think that's a great perspective to have. So
yeah. And with the Kewl Haze record, both of us had, in the last 5 or so years, had gone through all sorts of difficult mental, emotional, physical, even issues, which again, that we ended up pouring all of that into the record and into the lyrics and making something that's like relatable to people. And now that we look back on it, it's like, man, all of those terrible times were so hard in the moment, but like we wouldn't have had this thing to say or this song to write, and when it comes to art and music, it's like you're taking all of those things, good experiences, bad experiences, and then sharing it out. And the thing I love about music is that's the thing where people will really, they can hear a song and be like, I get it, I can relate to that. And that's where you can really like make change and movement in the world is, it's the language that everybody understands.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things about art in general is the feeling that you get of being like, okay, I'm not alone. Like,
Yeah.
someone else gets it. Like, even if you haven't talked to someone who is going through the same thing, if you listen to a song and they're talking about like thoughts that you're having that you thought, like, you may think, oh, like no one else is experiencing what I am, and you feel alone. And then you listen to a song and lyrics and you're like, wow, someone else does. And it makes you, I don't know, it transforms you and gives you that perspective and just that, whether it's like, you can get that through reading books, listening to music, watching films. It's like you were saying, there's that common denominator. You can extract that from all different art forms. And yeah, I'm sure like everyone has experienced that at least once, if not multiple times, of not feeling alone and getting a new sense of purpose from like listening to a song or just consuming an art form. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it.
Yeah,
So.
and really that's the thing that got me obsessed with pursuing the music thing, was being in a tough place when I was 18, 19, having moments like that where a song or multiple songs was like, oh, somebody else gets it. And then it occurred to me like, wow, what an amazing thing that this band or this artist took that difficult thing, made it something, physical, that then is shared to the world, and now I'm consuming it and I'm getting it, and now I'm inspired to do the same thing. It's like I want to take those experiences and give them back in a way that like might have somebody else have that epiphany.
Yeah, I love that. Talk about where people can find you and your upcoming record.
Yeah, so I have my personal website, danscottforreal.com. And then our band Kewl Haze is, we're on all social media as Kewl Haze, Kewlhaze. We had to spell it like we're in the 90s. And also kewlhaze.com. And our first single came out a couple weeks back. Second one's about to come out, and the full album comes out middle of April. So yeah, that'll be our debut LP, Suburban Sherpa. And it'll be Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Pandora, Tidal, the whole nine.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to listening to it. I listened to the first single on the album on the way here. So nice. I know there's a lot to follow up. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dan.
Of course, really, my pleasure. It was great.
Yeah. I thought this was, just a really thought-provoking, insightful conversation. And, I'm excited to continue to follow your journey, listen to the music, and see what's ahead for you. I'm sure, with the way you think about things, I'm sure it'll be, a good trajectory wherever you go. So thank you again.
Yeah.